caught that. I totally forgot to get to a video. It's been so crazy lately, and I caught that as I was going. But I think a lot of times in our lives, we make emotional decisions. A lot of times in our lives, we say things out of emotion. And what I've learned in my own life is the fact that when I'm emotional, and a lot of times when I am emotional, because every person is emotional, if I'm offended, if I'm angry, if I feel misunderstood, I might say something that I rather or shouldn't have said. And what I've learned about words is that you can't take them back. See, when we look at the 12 steps of AA, the 10th step often comes in handy when you're wrong, promptly admit it. So the key is that we got to understand when we're wrong. And you know, tonight I got surprised when I walked into the sanctuary, and it's been an extremely busy day. My mom is here with my aunt, and my aunt is looking at me like, "You better not get me up here." But these are two women that prayed for me when I was in the heart of my addiction. They had seen me grow up playing hockey, a very visible child. For the life of them, they couldn't understand why cocaine or crack or alcohol or marijuana would have gotten my attention and more or less proceeded to take me away from all my life's dreams, proceeded to take me away from my family and my children, my friends, my career, my integrity, my character. And I just want to acknowledge them and give, if you two would please stand and give them a round of applause for praying me into my freedom. Yes, you, Karen. But little did I know that this other champion that's here, that I don't know that I've ever met, and she's in town from Denver, and she was the nurse. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Mom. Why don't you speak about she? When I was born, this is the nurse that catered to me. Or what happened?
I brought you home, and she came over to see you. And she's a pediatric.
Okay. So she came over to see me. What was with my cord, my belly button? She was trying to clean my belly button, and I screamed and threw a tantrum.
David came in and picked him up so quick and tore him out of bed. He was scared of Loretta.
So all these years later, God had a plan, and Loretta is here from Denver. She's part of the Al-Anon program, and as I met her tonight, that was probably one of her proudest statements. She says, "I'm a member of Al-Anon." So it's a good lesson for all of us that you have nothing to be ashamed of. You don't have to be ashamed that you have a family member that suffers from alcoholism or addiction. You don't have to be ashamed that you suffer from alcohol or addiction, because as I look around this sanctuary, I'm looking at a bunch of champions. And one thing I've learned about champions, that talent without character is wasted. I believe that I knew I had a problem with addiction years ago for a guy that's been through 11 treatments. But I really, at the end of the day, you hear me reference this often, that I knew I had a coping problem. I know what it says in the book of Corinthians. It says, when I was a child, I talked, spoke, and reasoned like a child. But when I became a man, I put behind those childish things. And for me, I was a 35-year-old child. I was a grown man with little boy issues. I still didn't learn how to process. My processor was broken. If you have a computer today and the processor is broken, you've got to learn that you might need an update. You might need to be, more or less, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but when you reprogram your computer so it will work again. Well, there was a lot of reprogramming that needed to happen in my life, and I thank God all day, every day for the 12 steps as we're going through these last 6 weeks, because we know, before I get started, I'm going to invite God into this equation so it has nothing to do with me. Lord, I thank you for another day above ground and out of prison. Lord, I thank you for the ability to appreciate the sunshine today, the breeze on a nice, crisp spring day. Lord, I thank you for the friends that are here today that have helped save my life on a daily basis. Lord, I thank you for you, for giving me that grace and mercy and forgiveness that I so ever appreciate and experience on a daily basis. Lord, I pray for the misunderstood. I pray for the angry. I pray for the lonely. I pray for the anxious and the fearful tonight, that you may do a change in their heart and their minds. Lord, that it may be you speaking through my vocal cords and not you. As we talk about you removing our defects of character, so we may in turn allow ourselves to become like you and adopt the character that you have as our God. Lord, for those of us that do not understand you, including me at times, Lord, just give us the grace and mercy that we can live another day striving to be more like you. In your name we pray, amen. So if you look at the 12 steps, you're going to learn today in the literature in step 6 that the first step is the only step that we can, work as close to perfect as possible. The first step says we admitted we were powerless over our addiction and our lives had become unmanageable. We focused over the last several weeks on the word we. When I look at my path in recovery, I came to the conclusion that part of the we of helping me admit that I'm powerless, it took judges to help me admit. It took my children to help me admit. It took consequences to help me admit. It took pain to help me admit that I was powerless. Now, many years later, I come to the conclusion that I'm powerless over people, places, and things. A lot of time what you'll find in human nature, not just addicts and alcoholics, is that we're control freaks. And we want to control everything. We want to control people's actions. We want to control their reactions. And in my small group several weeks ago, I think so many of us do not appreciate how powerful the serenity prayer really is. Because if you ask God to grant you the serenity to accept the things you cannot change, right there, you're releasing control. You're trying to change something that only God can change. And we haven't practiced the art of acceptance. Accept the things we cannot change. Change the things we can. So those are the things that we can obtain power through God by working the third step, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, I didn't get here because I had a solid track record of wisdom of knowing the difference. I need the help of God and another human being and many human beings to help me know the difference, to accept the things I cannot change the things I can, but that wisdom is where we'll separate the men from the boys as far as when do you react and when do you act. So the first step says to us that we admitted that we were powerless and our lives had become unmanageable. Now you will look at a lot of functioning alcoholics that do not think that they need help with their alcoholism due to the fact that they're still showing up at work. Now, I would much be a jump off the cliff addict than somebody that's treading water, barely surviving on a daily basis, just can't wait till they get home to take another drink because they're so uncomfortable in their own skin, they cannot deal with reality, they have limited to no character. So the first step suggests to us that we need to admit that we're powerless and our lives have become unmanageable. The second step tells that we need to come to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Now, a lot of times people fail miserably where they think that their problems is merely drugs or alcohol, gambling, sex, whatever you think, codependency. And they think once I get my life straightened out, I will be sane again. But one thing that we fail to recognize when it comes to sanity is the fact that the insanity, we look so much externally, the insanity is internally. The insanity is what goes on in between your two ears. See, the insanity is what makes us relapse. The insanity of the inability to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. It's like we take swings and fight battles that only God can fight. So we waste a lot of our energy. So in step 2, we got to come to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. The third step says, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand Him. People get tripped up on that step all the time. First, if you're anything like me, we're all good talkers. Our yeses don't mean yes, and our no's don't mean no. When we say yes, we really mean no, and when we say no, we really mean yes. And what happens is the word decision, as the Bible says, faith without works is dead. So when you make a decision, it is a meaningless statement unless it's backed up by action. And what do we hear in the world? Actions speak louder than words. People were sick of me telling them what I was going to do. They wanted to see what I was going to do. They didn't want to hear, I'm not going to get the cart before the horse and talk about amends, but they were sick of me telling them that I'm sorry. And truly, if you look at step 3, made a decision to turn your will and your life over to the care of God. Now, 4th step says, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. All of us are good at taking everybody else's inventory. In fact, for those of us who are codependent in the room, naturally, I'm going to be okay if you're okay. Well, what if that other person never makes the decision to better their lives? Does that mean you're going to be affected your whole life? And that's the beauty of Al-Anon. So we need to dig deep. A lot of us only like to go to the surface. We never want to dig deep on the why behind the what. The what is active addiction. The why is, why do you feel so uncomfortable in your own skin that you would do what I did, and everything that I cared about I flushed down the toilet because drugs and alcohol were more important to me. Now, if you would have asked me, I would have told you that drugs and alcohol are not more important than my family, but my behavior did not dictate that statement. So that statement was meaningless. So that's why when we make a decision, we have to apply action. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory. Admitted to God, who already knows, to ourselves and another human being, the exact nature of our wrong. See, I like to beat around the bush. I don't like to get exact. I was joking with the guys in the small group the other week. It's like when you're trying to come real with it, like Pat said, she loves this community because people are real. But here's the thing. When I was a drug addict, I was exact. When I went to the dope man, I didn't fumble around my words of what I was there to do. He knew exactly what I was there to do. But when I come around my recovery, I dance around everything. I never get to the point. I'm afraid of the point. I'm afraid of feeling anything. I don't know how to feel. So that's why the 5th step says, admitted to God, to ourselves, and another human being, the exact nature of wrongs. What I found in my own personal journey is this. I wasn't able to admit it to myself until I admitted it to another person. See, when it's in the prison of darkness inside of you, it still holds you captive. But when it's released to the light out of your mouth to another person, you tend to see it for what it is. That's why they have us write the 4th step on a piece of paper. So admitting to another person, I had to do that before I could admit it to myself. But before I could admit it to God, to another person, and myself, I had to write it down in a 4-step, because it seemed to me, and this is why the 12 steps are the way they are, that when I got it out of my mind, when I got it out of my spirit, when I got it out of my soul, when I got it out of my flesh, and I saw it for what it is on a piece of paper, it lost its power. And when I went so far as to confess it to another person and admit, you know what, I did it. I did it. I own it. I was that person, but I don't want to. See, you got to understand, unless you own it, it will own you. But first you own it, then you disown it and let God have it. See, we're not going to surprise God. I've done, I don't know if 100+ 5th steps in all my years in recovery, but it's like people come and they're so ashamed to tell me what's on their 4th step. And they think I'm going to run out of the room once I find out what they did. And what typically happens, well, I did that too. I think the enemy, the devil, and the addict, whatever your understanding of that may be, tells you that you're unique. You're not unique. All of us may have traveled different roads to get here tonight, but the feeling of pain feels the same. Abandonment is abandonment. It don't matter if you had 5 people leave you or 1 person leave you. You still feel abandoned. Fear is fear. Anxiety is anxiety. Resentments are it doesn't matter if you're mad at the United States as a whole or you're just mad at 1 person. The person that's mad at 100 people versus the person that's mad at 1 person still feels the feeling of resentment. It don't matter. And if you really sit down and talk to an extremely angry person, they will come to the conclusion once you start talking to them, they really don't know what they're angry about. They're angry about everything. And if you learn, as the program teaches us, if your mind is trained to look at the differences versus the similarities, if you're constantly focusing on the problem versus the solution, you will wake up on a daily basis and you will find something to be mad about. This world's got plenty of things. You'll be mad at yourself, mad at your boss, mad at your coworkers, mad at your wife, mad at your husband. And that's where it comes down to step 6, where it says, we need to do this together. The Bible calls it the body of Christ. The 12-step calls it we. You cannot do this by yourself. You have to embrace the we of the program. We are entirely ready to have God remove all of these defects of character. Now, you hear it said in the recovery circles, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Well, for me, what it means for me to be entirely ready is I'm sick of me. I'm sick of empty promises. I'm sick of saying one thing and doing another. I'm sick of feeling like I'm condemned. I'm sick of feeling guilt. I'm sick of feeling anxiety. I'm sick of walking in fear every day. I'm sick of all this stuff. I'm sick of disappointing people. I'm sick of telling my kids one thing and doing another. I'm sick of making commitments and not showing up. I'm sick of telling my recovery groups that I'm in it to win it and not show up for 45 days. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. So you have to be sick of it to become entirely ready to have God remove. Now, I tried to be a better person. I tried not to drink. I tried not to do drugs. I tried not to cuss you out. I tried not to quit. But I can't do it in my own willpower. So God is the one that has to do this. The Bible says one plants, one waters, but only God can make it grow. So what it's saying is to have God remove it. Now, I wish I was a better person. You can't wish your way into recovery. This is a program of action. I wish I wouldn't, be so angry. I wish I wouldn't be so fearful. That doesn't work. And what it says to have God remove all these defects of character. I looked up the definition of character. It's the way a person thinks, feels, and behaves. I look at character. I mean, as I stated when my daughter got the cake, I want to raise my kids to be people of character. I don't care what they do for a living, as long as they're people of character. I look at my daughter going to Haiti and being gone for a week. Then I watch her go up to Sarabigo and make sure that she paid her tithe from the Sunday that she was gone to get caught up. I call that character. I look at my other daughter who's 17 that I try to give her some money and she won't even take it. I mean, usually 17-year-olds are like, no, Dad, you need money for the church. I don't need anything. I look at that as character. I look at my 16-year-old son, and God has freed me of the condemnation of me not being there for the last 11 years in the home because crack cocaine was more important to me. So I had to go through a divorce. I had to lose everything. But I come to find that it's where you end is where God begins. And I learned through character that it was easy to give God everything when I had nothing, but it isn't so easy to give God everything now that I got my family back, that I got a business, that I'm part of a church, that I'm part of a ministry, that I have all these blessings that God has given me. And if I don't have character, all those blessings will become burdens and obligations. But I fought so hard to get them back. See, I look at my 16-year-old son that I couldn't play ball with because crack was so important. I look at, he didn't grow up like me where my identity was being the captain of the hockey team. But I tell you what, he got one of the highest compliments that an athlete could get because the coach said to him this year, he says, I want you to be on my team, not because you're a good baseball player, because you need a lot of help. I want you to be on my team because you got character. You got enthusiasm. You got attitude. And you are contagious. So he went through the whole season and only played 2 games. But he's got character. We need to learn character. If you're under the sound of my voice and you're not working a program, you have 0 character. If you think you can do this your way, you have no character. For a guy like me, that was the majority of my life. So AA 12 Steps and 12 Traditions says, this is the step that separates the men from the boys. So declared a well-loved clergyman. So that tells us that pastors love AA. He goes on to explain that any person capable of enough willingness and honesty to try repeatedly step 6. See, I didn't get here because I had a whole lot of willingness or honesty. I had to learn willingness because of my lack of character. I had to learn honesty because of my lack of character. Lies would roll off my tongue without even purposely lying. How you doing? I'm doing miserable, but I tell you I'm doing okay. That's a lie. That's no character. And what it's saying is so true. What it says here, it says, he goes on to explain that any person capable of willingness and honesty, and therefore entitled to be called a man who is sincerely trying to grow in the image and likeness of his own Creator. Now, if I don't believe in God and this pew is my higher power, is my goal to grow in the likeness of the pew? See, we got to get to understand God in a way that God is love. And he describes himself in his Bible as love is patient, it is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it doesn't keep any records of wrong, it doesn't delight in evil, but it rejoices in the truth. Love protects, love perseveres. That's God, that's love, that's who God is. It's not who you may think it is. So our goal in step 6 is to sincerely try to grow in the image and likeness of our own Creator. It says, of course, the often disputed question is whether God can. Do you believe that God can remove your defects of character? And if you're sitting here and you don't think you have defects of character, let me remind you, as I often need to be reminded, and it says God can and will under certain conditions. Now, why wouldn't God remove my defects of character? That's a good question. Because wouldn't God want to remove my defects of character? Because without my defects of character, wouldn't I be more effective to Him? Without my defects of character, wouldn't I be selfless versus selfish? Without my defects of character, would I not suffer from greed and morally trust God that He's got my best interests in mind? So what might be those certain conditions that God may have in order to remove our defects of character? I think one example would be Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, where God tells us specifically and keeps it extremely simple, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Well, that's not easy for me because I got trust issues. God, I don't even really know if I trusted you back then because I was blaming you for all the bad stuff that happened in my life. So it says, trust the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding, the Bible says. What happens with character defects, when you try to figure out something, you're trying to figure out how to get yourself out of a jam that you got yourself in. That don't work. Do not lean on your own understanding and acknowledge Him in all your ways. And He promises, the Bible says, to make your path straight. Now, those would be conditions that God would do it. He wants to free us up to be of service to Him. And if you're of service to Him, all your desires, all your dreams, all your wants, all your fulfillments will come to pass. But the question is, do you trust that? See, you can be a good person on willpower for a period of time. Some of you can do it for years. Some of you can do it for days. Some of you can do it for hours. But without God, it's not going to happen. And it says, remove defects of character will be answered in the prompt affirmative by almost every AA member. My own willpower just wouldn't work on alcohol. How many times did you tell yourself that you weren't going to drink that day? That you weren't going to spend your paycheck, that you weren't going to rob, that you weren't going to steal, that you weren't going to go back on the promise that you were done doing what you were doing. So what it says here is it says, willpower wouldn't work on alcohol. Change of scene, best efforts of family, friends, doctors, clergymen. I have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to get sober. You know, it often strikes me as odd how somebody would be I've heard this in recovery circles. It blows my mind that once a person gets sober and works, and then they're mad about being taxed on their job when they just spent $100,000 of taxpayers' monies on Rule 25s. That's no character. It's no character. And what it says here, it says it's so important to understand that God got, the willpower wouldn't work, change of scene, demographics, whatever it was, once I break up with her, I'll be good. Or, you know what I told myself, and it's sad to say, and it hurts me to say it, I thought I'd be okay once my babies were born. I thought that would keep me on the straight and narrow. And that's what my heart told me, and it's what I wanted to do. There's a reason why they call this stuff cunning, baffling, and powerful. It doesn't discriminate just because you got a beautiful baby in the crib. It doesn't discriminate just because you got a raise at work or you just bought a house. It'll rob you of all those things. And we need to come to grasp of that. It says, AA have become entirely ready to have God remove the mania of alcohol. See, this is where I think we miss it often, that we are sick of the addiction. And that's what it says. We become entirely ready to have God remove the alcohol, drugs, codependency, whatever it is. And God has proceeded to do exactly that. I don't know if you were anything like me, but I could never envision my life without a pill, without dope, without alcohol. And what it's saying here, and I don't know that you're all sober. I don't know if you are or not tonight, but the majority, by looking at you, are. Did you ever think you could even be sober? Did you think you could put the bottle on? Did you think you could stop going to the casino? And what it's saying here is so true, that God proceeded to do exactly that. See, one thing I've learned about us is this. It doesn't matter that you do or didn't believe in God back in the day. You prayed to something. When you didn't know you were getting another breath, when the cops were behind you, when you were driving drunk, when they didn't let you see your kids, when you had to go in front of the judge, when you were puking your guts out in the toilet, we prayed to something. See, those foxhole prayers, if we did it on a daily basis, if we kept that conscious contact with God, and what it's saying here is so true. It says, having been granted the perfect release from alcoholism, why then shouldn't we be able to achieve the same means of a perfect release from every other defect or difficulty? God took the most deadly defect and difficulty, being my addiction. Why can't he take my anger? Why can't he take my forget it attitude? Why can't he take my bad attitude? Why can't he take my lying? Why can't he take my anxiety? Why can't he take my fear? Why can't he take my unforgiveness? Why can't he take my resentment? Well, he can. Do you give it to him? If he took the very thing that you never thought you could quit and released you from it, and don't pat yourself on your back and say that you did it. It drives me crazy when I go to treatment centers and I'm watching people. Well, at least I'm not court ordered. Like you're sitting here with a medal, you're in treatment? Comparing yourselves amongst yourselves, as the Bible says, isn't wise. You've been God ordered. I'd rather be court ordered than God ordered. I got to be a little more responsible to God than to the judge. But come to find, because of my lack of character and my defects, I can't be responsible to anybody, including myself. So without the removal of these defects of character, as it's saying, he asks only that we try to do the best we know how to make progress in building our character. See, the program teaches us it's progress, not perfection. And it drives me crazy to look at people that think they are perfectionists while they're making no progress. Perfectionists at least make progress. If you're a perfectionist, you strive to do it with excellence. You don't do nothing. And what did we learn from Joyce Myers? There's a sin of omission. You don't think you're doing anything wrong because you're not doing anything. Well, that's wrong. If you're not doing anything in your recovery, there's something wrong. And that's, again, a character issue. What it says, so step 6, we're entitled to have God remove these. AA's ways of stating the best possible attitude one can take in order to make the beginning of a lifetime job. This is going to be a lifetime job. This does not mean that we expect all of our character defects to be lifted out of us to drive to drink was. A few of them may be, but most of them shall be to be content and patient and prove it. Now, being patient, a lot of us are our own worst enemies. So all of a sudden a white lie comes off your mouth. You're like, why did I just lie about that? That's so stupid. I didn't have to lie about that. See, don't sit there and overanalyze why you lied. Just you make it right. See, we want to make a wrong right by being honest about it. And what it's saying, self-righteous anger can be enjoyable. Have you ever found yourself You like being angry because you're superior over the person you're angry about. A lot of us feel like we're victims, and that's a character defect. How can I be a victim when I've been to hell and back 100 times and I'm still breathing? I should be dead or in prison. How can I be a victim when I've been where I've been through my addiction? And that's what it's saying. Self-righteous anger also can be enjoyable. It is a perverse way we can actually take satisfaction from the fact that we may feel that people annoy us. For it brings a comfortable feeling of superiority. Gossip barbed with anger, a polite form of character assassination, has the satisfactions for us too. How many times have you killed a person in your mind? How long would your prison sentence be if you got convicted of what went on in your mind? What would be the rating of the movie that goes on in your mind? Would you let your kids see it? You probably would tell me no, but you fail to recognize they're seeing it unfold right in front of them. I'll say that again. Don't think our children don't see what we're doing. And what it's saying there is so important. It says, we live in a world riddled with envy. To a greater or less degree, everyone is infected with it. From the defect, we must surely get a warped yet definite satisfaction. Else, why would we consume so much great amounts of time wishing for something we have not, rather than working for it, or angrily looking for attributes we shall never have, instead of adjusting to the fact and accepting it? God created you to be you. Quit being envious about what somebody else has. And if you want what they have, do what they do. And don't be envious of material possessions. If you want peace, do what they're doing. If you see somebody that has peace, it says, consider too the talents for procrastination, which is really a sloth with 5 syllables. Nearly everyone could submit a good list of such defects as these. Few of us would seriously think of giving them up. At least they cause us excessive misery. Now, the world says that misery loves company. I beg to differ. Misery demands company. If you're miserable, you're going to make sure that somebody else is miserable with you. We always bring somebody in, just like Pat said. You want to reverse that and be the helping hand. Kindness is lifting down into somebody else's life and lifting them up to your level. And you're not on a high level because you're better or worse. You're at a higher level because you've been willing to do the deal. You've been willing to take direction and correction. And it says procrastination. Well, I'll start working a program next week. What if next week doesn't come? See, next week didn't come for a friend of mine on Monday. Next week didn't come. Monday afternoon didn't come. He lived at SV2. One of the greatest guys I've ever met. Genuine. Left our program, went to Teen Challenge. I'd lost track of him after that. But he died of an overdose on Monday. So many of us procrastinate to say we're going to get it together. What if that never comes? See, we all have another relapse in us. But do we have another recovery? And I will honor that brother. I will continue to serve addicts and alcoholics. See, as NA states, that no addict seeking recovery should ever have to die from the horror of addiction. Have you forgot how horrifying it was? See, when we had to find a better place for that brother, I'll never forget, Doug called his mom, and his mom was afraid for his welfare, but she thanked us for trying to help her son. See, I'm not speaking to the people that are already out the door tonight with their own conclusions on what you think your plan is. I'm speaking to the people that our friend just died of an overdose, and you better get serious about this program. I'm not even talking to the guy that already said he's moving out on June 1st without counsel. It's too late, buddy. You ain't listening, and you are going to go down. And I'm going to be that bold because my friend just died. You can't hear a word we're saying tonight because you are locked and loaded on your plan. Your plan got you here. Your plan got you here. Got a phone call from a guy last night that threatened my life, caused havoc in my company. And he called me to apologize from another treatment center. And I accepted his apology. And I forgave him, and I will let him back into this program. Amen. You will never know when your last chance may be. You will never know. And like I said, I'm not teaching boys and girls here tonight. I'm not going to comfort something that needs to be confronted. I don't want to have to make another phone call to a father that I have to say, why are you calling me? Your daughter just died. I don't want to have to sit in North Memorial one more time around a heroin addict that they pulled the tube out of her mouth, and I will forever honor her memory and have my wife and I have the family ask us. And I didn't even know what they meant. They said, will you pray her last rites? I don't want to be in that situation. But for those of us who think we know what's best for us, I'm here to tell you tonight you don't. If you did, you would not be in the predicament that you are. And I know you're a good talker, and I know you can convince everybody that you're okay, and I know you can say you're working a program. You should not assess if you're working a program or not. You should not be the one assessing. And you know what? Many times that I go out of a treatment center, Mom, I'm good. I'm healthy again. I'm sincere. I really want to do this time. I want to go back to my family. And I'm so good that I convinced her that that was true. And the devil is so crafty, I believed it was true too. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And if you have the audacity with the lack of character to not follow advice from the people that God has placed over you, it ain't going to work. It ain't going to work. And that's why it tells us, that's why God gives us this literature. It says, but even people that construct a list of still milder defects, they are obliged to admit that they prefer to hang on to some of them as a sense of comfort almost. It seems plain for a few of us can quickly or easily become ready to aim for spiritual and moral perfection, at least aim for it. We want to settle for only as much perfection as will get us by. See, I wasn't the type of dope fiend that just got by. I was all in. Has my program got as much effort than my addiction did? Has my recovery got the time that my addiction says? So the difference between the men and the boys and the men is the difference between striving for a self-determined objective for the perfect objective, which is God. Many of us will ask, how can we accept the entire implication of step 6? Why? That is perfection. This sounds like a hard question, but practically speaking, it isn't. Only step 1, where we're 100% admission we were powerless over alcohol, can be practiced with absolute perfection. Maybe I can postpone dealing with some of my problems indefinitely. Of course, this won't do. See, my whole life in college, I never went to class in my recovery. When I'm supposed to be this man of character and values, I skipped class all the time. But I dreaded the day that I had to take that final exam. See, in the majority of my life, I dreaded the day that you would find out whatever lie I was wrapped up in. I dreaded the day when they were going to give me a UA, and it was finally, but they knew I was good, so they said, you know what, Jeff? We don't give you UAs. We take DNA samples out of your hair. No character. No character. God had to remove those defects of character. And what it's saying here is that the first step, we got to work to almost perfection. Maybe. And how do you work the first step? we admitted we were powerless, and our lives had become a... How do you work that step perfectly? By working the other steps. By having a sponsor. By taking correction and direction. By being of service. By being a contributor, not a consumer. Stop the selfishness and the taking mentality, thinking that this world owes you something. This world owes you nothing. The fact that you're still breathing in this world is a miracle all by itself. It's quiet. I know this is hard to hear, but this is the truth. And if you don't adjust yourself to the truth, the truth is not going to adjust itself to you. You need to adjust yourself to the truth. And one thing I know about the truth, it hurts. But quit misunderstanding with something that you feel like it's hurting you when it's actually helping you. Don't understand. And the Bible says it's the truth that will set us free. And God says that He can remove those defects of character. And it says the moment we say no, never, our minds close against the grace of God. Delay is dangerous and rebellion may be fatal. See, some of us being rebels, we won't listen to what other people are saying. Why do people even care to give us advice? What is their... I oftentimes, over the years, 10 years in ministry doing this, like, well, Pastor Jeff, and I wasn't even a pastor then, well, he doesn't want me to move out. He just wants my rent. Like, if it was about the money, I'd recycle you all day, every day. I'm just trying to save your life. I mean, what personal benefit do I tell you, or some of these leaders tell you by, you're not ready. You're not ready. That doesn't mean you're failing. It doesn't mean, the thing is, but here's the thing. If you're going to be like I was, and like the phone call I got yesterday, another year has gone by, you got 100 more consequences, and you've gone nowhere. And I love it when guys, not so much the gals, but the guys call me, it's hard living with 7, 8, 9, 10 guys. Well, are you making it hard to live there? Don't come to me and preach to the choir. I got 85 of you. And I love each and every one of you. And I wouldn't be where I am today in my life without you. I count on you. I rely on you. I learn from you. I love hugging you. You're not a liability, you're an asset. But with the character defects, you're a liability. You're a liability, and so am I. I'm still a liability. My life insurance costs 10 times what my business partner does. They looked up my records, my medical records. They saw how many times I went to the urgent care to get narcotics. They saw all my treatments on my medical records. They did 10 companies. 10 companies wouldn't give me life insurance after all these years of recovery. Am I going to play the victim? No. And then I'd get out of my another treatment center. I'd start at the low level in a company. I'd size myself up with the owners. Yeah, maybe I did have just as much talent because I used to own a company, but I didn't have character because every time I got close to the top, I got high. Every time. Character. NA, it works how and why. Although some of us have not understood the critical importance of the 6 and 7 steps, they are essential actions that must be taken as we expect to make a significant and lasting changes in our lives. We cannot simply say, yes, I'm ready. God, please remove these defects and go on to step 8. If we gloss over the 6 and 7 steps and go and make our amends, we will only wind up owing more amends by repeating the same destructive patterns as before. How many times have we apologized for something just to go do it again? Character. The character of not taking advice. The character of not working the steps or lack thereof. Go and repeat the same thing, insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. The lifelong process of step 6 is just that, a process. We started the process of becoming entirely ready, and we'll strive to increase our readiness through our lifetime. Our job is to become entirely ready and open our hearts and minds to deep internal changes. See, some of us, like you've heard me teach, we think we're buried versus planted. And what happens is we get back to what we lost, and everybody's happy with us again. There's been no deep internal changes. We're so talented, I can make myself look good, I can sound good, I can make you believe that I am good, but if there is no deep internal changes done by God in our heart and our mind, if nothing changes, nothing changes, and if nothing changes, your clean date will. You can't argue with the statistics. People that come into this program and are here for a month and a half to 2 months, and there's no changes externally, there's something wrong. You should look healthier. You should look happier. You should be eating right. You should be sleeping right. I mean, those are things that naturally happen, but God is concerned with the inside. And it just doesn't say internal changes. It says deep internal changes. It says we are sick and tired of being the people we have been, but this feeling compels us to change and grow. We want to be different than we've been in the past, and the good news is that we already are. So each and every one of us is different tonight. If you're sitting in a church on a Tuesday night and you haven't run out the door, who is this lunatic teaching? Who does he think he is? He seems like he's pretty arrogant. You're still here. You've changed. You've changed. You're not drinking in the pews, I don't think. I didn't see too many heads bob during this, unless you're tired and sleeping and think I'm boring. This isn't boring to me. This is life and death. It isn't boring for me to study and learn about myself and my God and my recovery and what I want to be like. That's interesting to me. And it says it right here. Our job is to become entirely ready. It says we are sick and tired of the people we have been. It says we must do, rather than try to exert power and control over our defects, is to step of the way and allow the loving God to work on our lives. One part of the process involves becoming responsible for our behavior. We can't blame other people on how we feel and how we act. That's a character issue. On our spiritual foundation, we lay the principles of commitment and perseverance as we work sixth step. We need the willingness to make a commitment to pursue our recovery despite our continued presence of our character defects in our lives. We mustn't give up, even if we think no change has taken place. We are often blind to our own internal changes. We rest assured that what's happening inside of us is evident. See, when you're in it, you don't see it. I see a lot of you guys changing, and you don't feel like you are. Ask somebody what they see about you. You are changing. You are bettering yourself. You are transforming. God isn't going to lose his reputation over you. You may not be where you should be, but sometimes we thank God we're not where we used to be, but that gives me way too much leeway. It makes me become complacent. It makes me become procrastination. I'm going to strive for excellence on a daily basis. I'm going to do that whatever I can, and if I don't do that and I do get lazy, I got hundreds of you that will kick my butt in the right direction. I need that. It isn't just about me, because if I'm not here to help, who's going to help you? If you're not here to help me, who's going to help me? That's pretty important of you. And each and every one of you helps me. It helps me when people go down. It helps me when people stay up. It helps me when people lie to me because I say, by the grace of God, there go I. It helps me when people quit because you know what? I used to be a quitter too. It helps me when people lie to my face because I used to be a liar. It all helps me. It all helps me. It's all helpful. Everything is God sent or God used. It's all in your perspective if you got character. If you got character, and it's saying, on this spiritual foundation, we lay the principles of commitment and perseverance. And it says, with the help of our sponsor, but yet we want to do it all by ourselves. Who knows everything you're thinking and doing? God is good, but another human being needs to know too. I'm not saying I know what God's going to do, but I have never seen him run down and stop somebody. You see, God uses people. I didn't fly out of the crack house on a lightning bolt into treatment. Somebody had to walk me into treatment and sit down. You need help. God uses people. You know, I mean, it would just be, God is a relational God. He loves us. He loves having a relationship with us. You know what I say it all the time? Our relationships are screwed up because we're in them. But yet we blame the other person. And then it says, with the help of our sponsor, to write a list of those defects and focus. See, if you don't know what your defects are, just ask somebody. Ask somebody what your defects of character are and how they manifest themselves in our lives. Our character defects are the basic human traits that we have been distorted out of proportion by our self-centeredness, causing enormous pain to us and all around us. Check to really listen to what it says here. When the pain of remaining the same becomes greater than the fear of change, we will surely let go. It says in the basic text, it says, why ask for something before we're ready for it? This would be asking for trouble. So many times addicts have sought the rewards of hard work without the labor. See, we want something for nothing. Freedom isn't free. You have to work for it. I got asked by a guy, they nominated me as a pastor of 30 people in the country to go over to the Holy Land, and they'll sponsor 100% of the trip. It blew my mind today. It blew my mind by the Veterans Association. And I looked at that guy and I said, thank you for your service. Let's stop for a second. All veterans stand up. Let's give them a hand. See, they don't get enough of thank yous and that my family can sleep at night. And it's so important that he says, many of us cling to our fears, doubts, self-loathing, and hatred because there is a certain distorted security in this familiar pain. It seems safer to embrace what we know than to let go into the unknown. If we are not humble, we will be humiliated. If we are greedy, we will find ourselves never satisfied. You hear me say it all the time. If you're a taker, you'll take and you take and you take until you got nothing left. If you're a giver, the measure you use will be measured to you. But if without character, you don't buy into that. Before taking steps 4 and 5, we could indulge in fear, anger, dishonesty, and self-pity. Now indulgence of these character defects clouds our ability to think logically. I'll tell you once and I'll tell you twice that I am getting a video camera, so when people move into this program, what are you willing to do? Record. Stop. When you go start not thinking logically, I'll hit play. Is this the same person? Am I talking to the same person? And by then, they won't even care. They're locked and loaded. And they always tell me, well, I'm not going to get drunk. And they always get drunk. It's always about drunk. Addiction. We're creatures of habit. We always go back to where we were. Without God, we will continue to do that. But with God, we can move forward. It says, don't think just because you got 6 months clean, 6 years clean, that you're going to get a medal for thinking logically. I don't think logically. I need the help of God and another human being to help me think logically. Now, I can convince her that I'm logic. She looks at me crazy. There are times that words come out of my mouth that have no business coming out of my mouth. It says selfishness comes with being intolerable. Destructive chain that ties us to bad habits. Our defects drain us of all of our time and energy. Sit around tonight and be angry for 4 hours and see how much energy you got. My Grandma Emmy, my mom and aunt's mother used to have a sign in her house that said, "Don't just sit there, worry." So, when we're plagued with worry and resentment and fear, it drains our time and energy. Eventually, faith, humility, and acceptance replace pride and rebellion. We come to know ourselves. We find ourselves growing into mature consciousness. I think a lot of our lack of character is in the unconscious. We don't even know what we're doing. We begin to feel better as willingness grows into hope. Perhaps for the first time, we see a vision for our new life. With all this in sight, we put our willingness into action by moving on to step 7. Ephesians 4:20-24. We need to change one thing, that's everything. Everything's got to change. It says, but that's no life for you. Was that a life for you where you came from? It wasn't. Now look at the power of this program in this verse. You learn Christ. Joseph and I were talking about a statement made by a mentor in the county jail recently. And he made a statement, and I'm not going to get into a discussion about it, but it made me think that one of our buddies is in jail, possibly going to prison. And what this guy says, he never knew God. He wasn't really born again, because if he really knew God and if he was born again, he wouldn't have put dope in his system. That made me think. See, maybe I didn't know Christ. Maybe I thought I knew him. Maybe I thought I knew God. Maybe I thought I knew God loved me. Maybe I thought I knew God forgive me, but I've never experienced forgiveness. Maybe I didn't know nothing at all. Maybe I still don't know anything. And maybe by not knowing anything, I'll stay hungry. Maybe by admitting I know nothing, I'll stay desperate. I'll stay under authority. I'll take suggestions. Maybe I don't know one thing, even though I'm blessed with success. Maybe I don't know a thing. And I have to learn Christ. It says my assumption. Now, do you know what I assume when I sit here in front of you for months on end? My assumption is that you paid careful attention. But sometimes my assumption is wrong. You're not even listening. There are times when I talk to some people and they say what's going to happen, and I said, didn't you listen to the teaching? Didn't you read the literature? You're reading your own mail. It needs to go back in the mailbox. It needs to go back to the sender called the devil. Return to sender. You're reading the wrong mail. That's direct right there. That's never came to me. You need to return that information to the sender. My assumption is that you paid careful attention to him, been well instructed in the truth precisely. We have it in Jesus. You're being taught differently here. Since then, we do not have the excuse of ignoring everything, ignorance in everything. It's like, didn't you, I'm going to go do this, I'm going to do, what did you just do for 6 months? What about those 4 Tuesdays you heard every month? What about church? Are you not listening? Did you not just hear my friend died of an overdose? Did you not just hear that this kid called me and he's still alive? That's all I cared about. Did you not see your friend who made his own decisions go out and get drunk a week later? Did you not see that? Are you listening? Are you listening? It says, I do mean everything connected to that old way of life has to go. Not just the active drinking, using, or gambling. Your thought process. Your inability to stay humble. Your anxieties, your rebellion. It's got to go. And if it don't go, you're going with it. And where you're going is a place you don't think it's going to be. But it always is that same place. Hell. Hell on earth in the active addiction. It says it right here. It says, it's rotten through and through. Get rid of it. And then take on an entirely new way of life, a God-fashioned life, a life renewed from the inside, not a life renewed, well, I look good again, I got money again, mommy and daddy, please let me back, please, I'm doing good, I have all the intentions to do good. You got the outside straightened out and the inside's still a mess. Babe, can I come back home? I'm doing good. Don't listen to your spouse if they're telling you you're doing good. Listen to the leadership of the program that God put them in to find out how they're doing. It says, renewed from the inside, working itself into your conduct as God accurately reproduces His character in you. So step 6 is this. Ask God to remove your lack of character and ask Him to replace His character in you. We'll take a 10-minute break.